Let's do this, the Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm Bruce McCurdy of the Edmonton Journal's Cult of Hockey, and I'm here tonight with my colleague Kurt Leavins from Pender Island in BC, where he has been enjoying the Edmonton Oilers 7-1 beatdown of the Calgary Flames tonight. Welcome, Kurt.
Hello, Bruce. Good to be with you. I'm 4 points better tonight than I was 2 nights ago.
Well, 8 points better if you think two 4-pointers, you know.
Yep, absolutely.
So a real hard fought affair tonight. I thought for the first while, Calgary was really bringing it hard in the first period and seemed to be carrying the play in Edmonton's zone for much of the time. But then Edmonton would unleash Secret Agent 97, and he would take a hold of the puck for 5 or 10 seconds, and a red light would go on, and the goal horn would blare, and a big number would go up on the scoreboard, and it seemed to keep on happening. So it was a tour de force and a great performance from Edmonton's captain on a night where, in playing back-to-backs and going a little bit short-staffed, which we'll also talk about, to get that offensive cushion in the first part of the game was a gigantic portion of this game. So of course we'll be talking about Secret Agent 97 and a few other good things that happened tonight, but we're going to go with two good things each, of course, with it being a resounding Edmonton win over Calgary. We could probably go with 3 or 4 good things each, but we'll stick to 2. And 2 bad things, 1 each, and 2 numbers. So, Kurt, I'll let you kick off with the first good thing.
Well, I want to talk about the goaltending because I think we all know 10 days ago there was a goaltending controversy in this town. We had our young AHL goaltender in the nets. We had lost our third string NHL goaltender to waivers. The guy that we'd claimed on waivers, we lost him on waivers. And Mike Smith was hurt, and Mikko Koskinen was either dead tired or not playing well or a little bit of both. And all of oil country was up in arms because here we are another year out of the playoffs, and all because Ken Holland didn't do his damn job and fix the goaltending problem in the offseason. Well, fast forward to Saturday night, and Mikko Koskinen, fresh off a 43-save victory over the Calgary Flames and the second of back-to-backs. That is his second win in consecutive starts for Koskinen. And, of course, Mike Smith has won 4 out of his last 5. All of a sudden, we see Smith and Koskinen playing at the top of their game. And suddenly we see the situation we saw last year when this club was getting really good goaltending, where that the two guys were complementing one another. When one guy was playing well, the other guy was getting some rest and staying fresh. And suddenly we've gone from woe is me to, wow, we got 2 goalies. And so I thought that was really the good thing out of tonight. Mikko Koskinen wasn't the reason we won tonight. I thought those 43 saves, the 44 shots on net, score effects were in play early and often in this one. Yeah. Let's be honest about that. Yeah, and I think a lot of the chances that Calgary registered weren't grade A chances. Certainly early on, there was a few more as the night wore on. But the fact that he was as solid as he was, facing that much rubber, not letting in a softie, I think it's what a huge development for this team. And you know what, I had someone point out to me that, Mikko Koskinen, because he is the size and style of goaltender that he is, that the technical aspect of the game is maybe bigger for him than a more athletic goaltender, such as Mike Smith. And so if you're playing all the time and your coaching staff is doing your best to try and give you a breather, give you some rest, which God knows he needed, well, he might be getting the rest all right, but he's not getting the reps on the ice. He's not getting the extra time with his goalie coach. And all of a sudden, maybe you're just a quarter of an inch off.
Right.
And at this level, against elite competition, because these are the best players in the game, a quarter inch off means you're off. And I think once he started to feel the fatigue, I think we saw that in Koskinen. Yeah. Now that he's had a number of proper practices and some good time to look over some film and go over some details with his goalie coach, all of a sudden he looks sharp as a tack again. So I'm pretty up on our goaltending these days. And as I said, what a turnaround from 10 days, 2 weeks ago when we were playing Stuart Skinner in above his head because we kind of didn't have anything else. So pretty nice development and a good performance for Big Mikko tonight.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I mean, one of the truisms about goaltending is bigger goalie, bigger holes. And that's where the technical aspect comes in. That you got to seal off those holes and seal them off while you're moving, while you're dropping, while you're, responding to the puck. That you're not opening stuff up, and the pucks were starting to beat him in tight to the body, and that didn't happen tonight. And in fact, that they weren't really beating him anywhere. Now were they? So since Mike Smith came back, he's only had 2 starts in 7. But in both of them, he came in on a back-to-back night where his team in front of him was tired from playing the night before. And on each occasion, he faced over 40 shots. He made 40 saves in the 3-2 win in Ottawa, and he was the reason they took that game, in my opinion. And then tonight, 44 shots, 43 saves, and he did get lots of goal support. So the outcome of the game was not in doubt, but he kept stopping pucks and frustrating the Flames at every turn. And this in the game. Officially, the shots were 19-10 in the first, 14-8 in the second, 11-6 in the third. So wide disparities in favor of Calgary in all 3 periods. And the Oilers, they did have some trouble getting the puck out over their own blue line, and there were some extended pressures by Calgary. But for the most part, the shots they were taking weren't from the grade A scoring chance areas. So we
agree. Yeah.
Koskinen was standing big on the outside shots. He got lucky 1 or 2 times, and he got, but mostly it was because he was filling the net, and they couldn't find any holes in him at all. So a stellar performance by big Mikko Koskinen between the pipes for Oilers. And by my count, they've now given up. They've won their last 7 wins in a row, which is they had 2 losses sprinkled in there, which were both 6 goals against, where the things broke down and came apart. But their last 7 losses or wins in those 9 games, they gave up 2, 1, or 0 goals in each of those games. And I think a total of 9 goals against in the 7 wins altogether. So some stellar performances. I mean, back-to-back nights of holding the Flames to a single goal.
Yep.
And sweeping the series. That's just golden. So let's turn to my first good thing. That's going to be the obvious, as I often do with my first good thing. And tonight, the obvious is Connor McDavid is on another level of hockey from mere mortals.
He was something else tonight, Bruce. Wasn't that a display?
This is going to be a 10 in my player grades tonight, which is not something I've given up very often. But tonight's performance from McDavid in just 17 minutes and 35 seconds of work. But let's face it, the work was all done in the first half of the game when he got primary assists on the first 2 Edmonton goals and then scored the next 3 himself to stake him to a 5-1 lead. And basically from then till the end, it was garbage time. So Coach Dave Tippett called off the Dogs and gave McDavid a chance to rest on the bench. And they, and when they got a power play, they put out the second unit followed by the third unit.
Jujhar Khaira was on the power play in the 3rd period.
Yeah, so McDavid did not get a chance to expand. I mean, halfway through the game, he was halfway to Darryl Sittler's record, right? And in a different game or a different era, they might have been putting him back out over the boards time and again to take a run at that record. But in this case, the focus here is not so much on records. It's about winning hockey games. And it's about winning the next hockey game as well as the one in question. So giving McD a little bit of a breather, and his line mate RNH, who only played 16:47 tonight, and that was in the 3rd period those 2 guys didn't see a lot of ice at all. And so that was a nice sort of benefit from running up the score early. And I thought McDavid, last night he was pretty so-so, right? And I think you graded him
I
a
agree.
5, and I think you got it right.
Yep.
And we were both saying, well, he's got another level to bring. And tonight, with his teammates playing back to back and running shorthanded, because I know early in the game they were down to 5 defensemen and they were later down to 11 forwards, that the best way to give his team, uh, was to provide the cushion, put the goals on the board, and to spirit Calgary. And Calgary was, after a very strong push early in the game, they grew, I think, increasingly dispirited as the game went along. And McDavid, I mean, the goals, I mean, the 2 assists were both brilliant passes, cross crease passes for to open guys. One was a tap in by Chason. One, Nugent Hopkins had the yawning cage and time to put it in there.
Yeah.
And then McDavid started taking matters into his own hands, where he hadn't scored a goal in a few games. And he scored one deflecting a point shot out of midair and beating Riddick. And then both the 4th and 5th Edmonton goals were just masterpieces of deception, of stick handling, of puck control. I mean, he swooped in and he stole the puck off, was it Hannafin?
Yep.
At the center red line, chipped it off his stick, controlled it in his own skates. He almost overskated the puck, but he was able to pull it up from his skates to his stick as he crossed the blue line. He came in and he looked pass, wham! And all the time his stick blade was open. He was dangling, doing that dusting of the puck that he does with an incredible speed, where you'd need one of those high performance cameras to catch all of the dangles as he goes around that puck. And at no point was there anything to this old goalie's eye that telegraphed that he was going to shoot that puck, unless your clue you were looking for was the fact that he was trying to pretend he wasn't going to shoot the puck, in which case he did it perfectly.
I've watched that replay 6 or 7 times, and I swear, even when he shot the puck, I don't think he was looking at the net. It was really something. Yeah.
No, he wasn't. Then the 5th goal, where he came out from behind the net, and he, again, just magical sleight of stick, where he was dangling the puck and surveying his options while stick handling at the approximate speed of a hummingbird's wings. And then the hole opened up in the netminder, and bang, into the corner it went, and bang, off to the bench went Calgary star goalie Jacob Markstrom, having been lit up for 5 goals on 15 shots. And you want to talk about shooting efficiency, McDavid himself was credited with 3 shots on the night, and they all went in the net. And he was, to my eye, strong defensively. He was good on the face-off dot, 67%, and there was no real weakness in his game. And just for his complete transcendent dominance in the first half of the game, he's not just the good thing, but he's the full 10.
Was his second natural hat trick in the Battle of Alberta, I believe. I think his first one was October of 2017, if I remember right.
3-0 win when he scored all the goals. Yeah,
yep.
That's a natural hat trick if I ever seen one.
No kidding. Yeah, so, as I was watching tonight, as you know, I'm an old Bobby Orr fan from long ago, and I never got tired of watching Bobby play the game, and I was always amazed at the speed with which he could execute in both directions. And I don't think I've seen another player close to that until Connor. The speed with which he plays the game in both directions. And I think he's at that level, and he may have eclipsed number 4. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, our colleague David Staples, he made what was to me an eye-opening observation about McDavid when he was still a junior, before the Oilers had even won the lottery, and we were talking about how good McDavid was, and he said he's Bobby Orr playing center. And it's like just such a simplified way of looking at it, and I'm sort of going, yeah. What would Bobby Orr look like as center? Something like that. You know,
It's a really
'cause-
good point because Bobby was another guy who actually skated faster with the puck on his stick, right? So the
yeah.
similarities abound, and the fact that Bobby ended up representing Connor is probably not an accident. So it's
Mhm.
so yeah, no, I agree with you, and I'm sure everybody watching the podcast tonight does as well. That was a transcendent performance, and if it's a 10, you certainly won't get an argument from me.
Yep, that's we all the numbers that we give have a parallel word that they describe, and the number we used to call 10 perfect, and then we realized there is no such thing as perfect, no matter how good a player plays.
Yeah.
So we changed the word to transcendent, meaning well above and beyond just merely outstanding, which is 9.
Mm-hmm.
10 is just a game that's on another level, and this was one of those. So
I think I've given 3 10s the
okay.
entire time I've been scoring games for the Cult of Hockey. And
Hmm.
I believe all 3 were Connor performances. So,
Yeah, I've only ever given up. I'm sure it's less than 10. I've been doing this for this is my 11th season of player grades now, and I'm very cheap, parsimonious at giving out 10 grades. I like the 9s and I save the 10s, but I save them for nights like this. So
well, you know what? I love that we save them. I often get questions from people saying, "Oh,
hmm
don't you think that was a 10 tonight?" And I explain to people, we save the 10s for truly special
yeah,
performances.
that's
So
right.
that 10 really means something, and I certainly think it's deserved tonight. So.
Right on. Well, okay. So let's now that we've established that McDavid is at another level. Let's move on to your second good thing, and we'll move back into the merely human category and have at her, Kurt. What's your second good? Who is your
Well,
second thing?
this mirror human has been superhuman the last 2 games. So my second good thing is Darnell Nurse. And as you and
Mhm.
I know, there's an element in oil country that they're not Darnell Nurse believers. And after having
Yep.
watched him over the last 2 games, um, I really wonder if those people are now going to just kind of, sink into the woodwork, because how do you ignore the performances that he has put on the last 2 games? 30 minutes and 1 second last night when Dave Tippett chose to really run his third pairing light and really went with 4 defensemen, and Darnell really carried the water in that game. Then on back-to-back nights, placed 32-54
Whoa.
tonight. So the guy has played over a regulation game over the last 2 matches,
Wow.
all against the other team's best competition. A fair bit of power play time, a heavy emphasis on the PK. Um, Really no choice but to play him for a big chunk of those minutes, because on the first night, I guess there was a choice, but again, Dave decided to go with 4 defensemen. Tonight, Slater Cuckoo played 1 shift and he was out for the night. So
Right.
really, Darnell was going to be taking those extra shifts on the left-hand side all night. Um, at this point, watching this player play at this level and shoulder that much ice time within the context of back-to-back games and still perform at that level, how can anybody argue that maybe he's not a true number 1 defenseman in the NHL, but how can you possibly argue that the guy is not a legit top pairing NHL defenseman? From what I've seen the last 2 games, the argument's done. Darnell Nurse has put that one to bed. Let's move on to more pressing matters, because clearly this guy has risen to another level in his career this year, and good for him and good for us.
Yeah, I like the degree of control that he showed out there tonight. Like time and again, he
Mm-hmm.
would just take command of the puck in his own end, and rather than rush his play, he would take command of the situation and see what his options were. And I think he's starting to find that space where he knows that he's got more time than he used to think he had,
Yeah.
and that um, and that rushing into a play or just jumping into action, uh, trying to carry the puck out under duress is not necessarily the way. That the way is a big part of the way is to conserve energy. you're going to be playing 30 minutes a night, you can't be going pell-mell for all 30 minutes because you're going to hit the wall at some point. And especially 2 nights in a row, back-to-back games over 30 minutes is just mind-boggling.
Well, the phrase that pops into my head for when we talk about defensemen like that can handle that kind of workload, the phrase we often use is rocking chair.
Right.
And I think it's pretty hard to say prior to this season that we've seen Darnell Nurse in the rocking chair much. He's always been way more of a high event player than that. But a number of times, including these last two, I think we could say he's been in that rocker. And he has a long way to go before he ascends to the great NHL defenseman. But he certainly played like one of them for the last two games. And so that's why he's my second good thing.
Yeah, well, 2 more assists tonight. I think officially they're saying +3, but I think officially that'll come down with +2. There was an error in the assignations there. 6 minutes and 47 seconds on the penalty kill, and this was a penalty kill. You know, the reason Slater Kukuk was in the lineup was that he was the 4th penalty killer.
Yep.
Well, guess what? He left the game in the first shift, and then so they're down to 3 defense penalty killers, and then on at least one of the penalties, one of those 3 was in the penalty box. So they were heavily reliant on Nurse and Adam Larsson, who also played 6:47 on the kill, and the Oilers gave up 0 power play goals to the Flames. And with that, I'm going to segue to my second good thing, which is in fact Adam Larsson, who, if you look at the possession numbers, you'll think, man, that guy had a brutal game. The puck was in the Oilers' end the whole time. They didn't get they didn't have a lot of possession. And then but the puck in Oilers' end is where Larsson does his best business. They weren't necessarily getting the puck out. The forwards were having trouble getting it out, but Larsson was going to the boards, joining the battle time and again, and crunching every flame that came within reach. Officially, he had 10, count them, 10 hits in this game tonight. And I was saying to my wife, partway through the third period, I was saying I think he's going to reach double digits. And I hadn't seen any of the event summary at that point, but I was not at all surprised to see the 10, because he was just mashing and crashing. And there was, other battles that were just shoulder to shoulder that weren't necessarily hits, but he wasn't losing those battles. And he was, at minimum, forcing the play to the outside along the perimeter where they couldn't really do a lot of damage. And more than a few times, he just outright won the battle, got a hold of the puck, and made a play to clear it. And that happened especially on the penalty kill, when those possession numbers don't necessarily tell you a whole lot, but you have the key defensive play to stop the cycle, get the puck down the ice, and change or not change if you don't have another guy ready to come out for you. And he was, I thought, indomitable tonight. And he played 24 minutes and 9 seconds tonight, and I think he played 24:11 last night. I mistakenly in the podcast said Chris Russell when I meant Adam Larsson, that played the 24 minutes and change last night. And it was just another repeat performance tonight, and he brought it, and he brought it hard. Man, he would be a tough bastard to play against, wouldn't he?
And again, when you take it in the context of back-to-back games, Nurse is the one thing, but we all know that Nurse has natural skating skills. Larsson doesn't. And all that PK time, those are hard minutes. Yeah. So the fact that Larsson was still performing at such a high level at the end of the game with all those miles after just about 50 minutes of ice time, that's pretty impressive for a guy that isn't the best skater on the team.
Yeah, and even with the big lead in the third, like, he never let up. It was just grind, crunch.
Yep, good call.
And make the play. So he and Nurse are going to get very high grades from this game as well. And Larsson, for his part, I believe he was +2 in this game as well, despite the shot disparity. And the Oilers won his portion of the game despite being under heavy pressure for a lot of it. And to me, that's in a game where score effects were such a big factor in what the shot clock said. You can't really trust it. I mean, it's I've made this comparison before. It's like that football game where the one team jumps out to a 21-0 lead in the early going with some big plays, maybe a pick six and a kick return or something, and they play prevent defense where the other team will pick up the yards, and if you just use yards as your yardstick of who's controlling the game, you say, well, that quarterback passed for 450 yards, and then and he got from his 20 to our 20 a bunch of times, and then they couldn't, penetrate the red zone to put the ball in the end zone, and all he did was kill the clock while he was doing all that possessing of the ball. And that's kind of what happens in a one-sided hockey game sometimes, where the shot clock and the possession metrics are rendered more or less meaningless.
It's going to be interesting what happens if Cuckoo is out, and it looks like he might be. That didn't look good. You assume at this point that, well, personally, I've been one to agree that Caleb Jones is the odd man out. I think this does open the door for him now. It'll be an interesting decision, though, won't it? Because I think Larsson and Russell have been really good together. Mm-hmm. But do you really pair Caleb Jones with Evan Bouchard? That's going to be an interesting call, because I really like both players, particularly Bouchard, but that isn't a third pairing that would be high on my list of things to do. So it'll be very interesting to watch and see strategically how they put their pairs together, because it sounds like the other three. Well, Bear hasn't been on the ice. He hasn't been skating, at least with the rest of the team. And neither has Lagesson, who has the wrist injury. Right. So it'll be an interesting call going forward here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, no Bear, no Larsson, no Cuckoo, and all of a sudden your 9 defensemen just like that have become 6.
Boom, we're 6. Yeah, exactly.
And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, unless they have someone that's closer to returning than you and I think, we might be hearing Theodore Lindstrom coming up from Bakersfield just to be a 7th in the coming days. So it's a good thing they had 9 after all. Maybe it was a good thing that they sheltered those younger defensemen and carried that extra, all their extra roster players on the blue line. It's starting to look a little more wise now that the inevitable injuries have started to take effect.
Especially if Winnipeg ends up putting Anton Forsberg back on waivers. But we'll see if that transpires, but it sounds like it's a pretty good possibility. So
right on. So let's move on to quickly our bad things, one each. So you go first.
Well, I'll pick the Flames goal. And
can't have those.
Boy, I watched that replay over and over again, and I think Dave Tippett made the absolute right call to challenge that goal. I don't blame the referees on the ice. I think that's a tough call in real time. But what replay was the War Room watching? In what parallel universe is that not goaltender interference? Was there some contact between Nurse and Tkachuk? Yeah, there absolutely was. But if you watch the play, 2 things happened. One, the player went in the opposite direction from which Nurse pushed him. Yeah. And 2, you can see the player's legs extend as he pushed himself into the goal. He knew exactly what he was doing. Now, in the big scheme of things, it ended up not mattering much at all in a 7-1 game. Right. But you know what? There are 2 reasons why that goaltender interference call is there. 1, it's to determine whether a goal is legal or not. 2 is to protect your goaltenders from that kind of shenanigan for going on. And in my opinion, all the NHL did by allowing that goal, as I said, in the end, it's immaterial in the ultimate outcome of this game. What they've done is they've said to Matthew Tkachuk, it's just fine for you to do that to another goaltender. Go right ahead. It's perfectly okay. And frankly, it's bull you know what. Yeah. And I watch my language on Twitter, but I'll admit I let that BS call fly tonight because I really thought it was an awful call by the War Room. And I was almost ready to forgive and forget after the 7-1 game, but I've realized I'm still upset about it.
Well,
So I'm
there's
I'm
not that many
glad for
bad things that we have to complain about other than the one, right? I mean, it should have been
yeah.
7-0, eh?
Yeah, and
But
honestly, I thought it was a really soft call on Draisaitl to put them on the power
oh
play to begin with,
man,
like a real softie. But then to add insult to injury to allow that was just I was just apoplectic. I'm a little better now, so that was my
still
bad
sound
thing.
like you're kind of not happy. Anyway, it was to me, to my eye, Nurse definitely did initiate contact, and that's why I'm sure why they decided to let it go. But
Mm,
Nurse was trying to push Kachuk past the left Koskinen's left goal post.
yeah.
And Kachuk actually managed to go all the way across the net front and push Koskinen's right leg inside of the right goal post and kind of turned Koskinen around while Mangiapane came in to
Mm.
clean up the mess.
Yeah, it was a
And
45-degree turn.
yeah, oh yeah, no, it was pretty
Yeah.
blatant, and it was, just like Nurse. He pushed Ryan Kessler into the crease that one time too, but he didn't cause Ryan Kessler to grab Talbot's pad.
Right?
And I'm
Yeah.
still livid about that 4 years later.
You and me both,
And I'm going
friend.
to take that one to my grave, man. That
Yeah.
was just brutal. Anyway, this one tonight was not anywhere within 0.001% as costly as that one, but it was still enough. And especially when it's an opponent that, you have a healthy, possibly unhealthy dislike for, like a Kessler
Uh-huh.
or a Kachuk, that gets away with one, and you're just kind of, so. My bad thing is the two injuries that sent
Mm.
two Oilers down the tunnel. Slater Kukuk in the very opening minutes of the game, he played just 14 seconds before Sam Bennett skated right through him with a high, heavy, I thought pretty borderline dirty hit, frankly.
Me
That
too.
called a 2-minute interference penalty, the same that Leon got for tapping a guy's stick in the neutral zone. One injured a guy and put him out, and the other one was inconsequential. But hey, 2 minutes is 2 minutes, I guess. But losing Kukuk so early in the game and on the back-to-back, and I'm going, oh no, these guys had logged all these minutes last night, are
Mm-hmm.
already facing the specter of having to play down a man on the blue line tonight. And if you're thinking you're going to get, Nurse down to 25 minutes and Larsson down to 21, well, that just went out the window, and that's
Yep.
where the McDavid putting the big number on the scoreboard early was such a huge thing. But losing that guy and being one of their penalty killers, so when they ran into a series of penalties later, it was it was too few guys that had to do it. Uh, I thought the penalty they killed after the unsuccessful um, uh, goalie interference challenge was huge. If Calgary had scored there to make it 2-2, that would have
Mm.
turned the game significantly. And that was a big kill, and it was a clean kill. They did a lot right on that kill.
Yeah, really good catch. I agree completely.
And then halfway through the second period, Takao Yamamoto, in trying to clear the zone, got sandwiched. He got hit right between the 5 and the 6 in the back by whichever flame it was that went to the box,
It was
which
Lindholm,
was
wasn't it?
Lindholm. And he
Yeah.
knocked him right into that big guy, Buddy Robinson, who
Mm-hmm.
managed to bring his elbow up and smack him in the side of the head. So I'm very concerned that might be a head thing. And it was probably an issue. He went right down the tunnel. And it's
Bleeding from the
something where
nose.
he would have, yeah, oh, I didn't see that. He would have
Yep.
had to be in the quiet room for 15 minutes. And it may have been a matter of, in a different night, he would have been okay to come back. But they said, it's 6-1, take your skates off.
Yeah.
And rest up in the third period. We got other guys who can handle it. So it's you
I
can't
thought that one was
conclude.
the dirtier of the two checks,
Hmm.
honestly.
Hmm.
Yamamoto taking it in the numbers. To me, that's and as close to the boards as they were. Like, how's that not a dangerous hit?
And then but the fact that he got the double whammy literally when he ran
The,
into the blunt end of Robinson's elbow, and I think that
the,
was a
yeah,
defensive maneuver by Robinson. Like I don't think he was trying to take his hat off. I
I
think he
agree.
saw the guy coming and he was just responding to it. But
Yep, I
unfortunately,
agree. It's
when
Lindholm that I had the issue with.
when Robinson is
Yeah.
6'5" and Yamamoto is 5'6" or whatever, one guy's elbow is another guy's head, and it doesn't have to come that high to make solid contact. But and then the Oilers took two more penalties right after that, and it was
Mm.
It was 6-1. I think it was 6-1 by then.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
And
Russell took the one,
then,
and
and Russell took one, and he was a defenseman, and they were already shy of penalty killing defensemen. And I thought this is going to be a tough kill. And then Archibald took one, and they were down that penalty killing forward in Yamamoto. And again, it was sort of, they haven't got enough guys really to kill this off with any kind of a normal cycle. And if Calgary pots one here, it gives them some life and stuff. And they made their way through those two kills. And that was really the last time Edmonton was in any kind of danger, really.
I was just looking for something when you mentioned that, because I believe when Russell went to the box, I think Barry took 1 or 2 PK shots there, which isn't what we acquired him for, and is not what he's known for. But I thought he acquitted himself quite well in that situation.
Yeah. Well, even Evan Bouchard played 121 on the PK, and when you've got Kuk in the dressing room and Russell in the penalty box, you've only got 4 guys left to kill the penalty. So you're going to, so they did. And of course, they did have the fairly safe lead, but they put him out there, and then he also got some time on the PK in the third period when it was.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the real positives, other than the obvious things we've already talked about, is they were able to give Bouchard lots of ice, and in all 3 situations, which is all really good growth opportunity for a young D-man like that.
Yeah, well, he played 18 minutes and 28 seconds on the night, and without having his time on ice page handy, I would guess that close to half of that were probably in the third period, where they got him out there a lot, and there was absolutely no reason not to after Nurse and Larsson and the others had done the heavy lifting that they had for 2 games.
Yep, for sure.
So one last category, and that's our numbers, one each, or one set of related numbers each. And so I'll let you go again. Have the lead, Kurt. What is your number?
7.
Okay.
7 is now the gap in the standings between the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames. And if you prorate that over an 82 game schedule, at this stage in the season, that would mean that the Oilers have a 12-point bulge on the Flames. You and I talked before the weekend started, dare to dream. Right. But if you could sweep these series, all of a sudden you put meaningful distance between yourself and Calgary, and be damned if they didn't manage that. Now you've got a 7-point edge, and Calgary is they're looking up at Montreal, because the Habs are in 4th place now, but Montreal has a game in hand on Calgary. And so now the Flames and the Canucks, I think they're tied with 17 points, and Ottawa has 9, right? It's not too early in the season for those guys to be super concerned, because now that's a big amount of points that you have to claw back. And so having that gap at the end of a back-to-back, where you could just as easily lose both as win both. The result that we got was the best one possible. Both wins in regulation, so no Bettman points handed out. All of a sudden, here's this team. We went from being out of the playoffs to in 2nd place, reasonably in a comfortable position at this point of the season, dare we say. 7-point gap on the Flames, who I picked to be a playoff team this year, is pretty significant.
Yeah, well, Edmonton is, they've played 20 games, which is the most except for Vancouver, who's at 21. And now after their 3-6-0 start, they pulled it all the way up to 12-8-0 with a 9-2 run. All of a sudden, the Oilers are plus 10 in goal differential. And after, they did sweep Ottawa, and they swept them twice, once here, once there. But against the teams that were basically deemed to be in the hunt, which is all the other teams in the Canadian division, they were playing split. And to finally get a sweep against one of those teams, that's a huge difference maker.
There hasn't been a bunch of them this year, has there?
No.
Yeah.
No. So that, that 12-8, I mean, you can say, well, the 4 games above 500 is the 4 against Ottawa, and you wouldn't be wrong. But everybody has those games. You got to win them. Not everybody
Yep.
has been winning them, and the Oilers have. Ottawa's beaten some teams,
Including
So
the
they
Leafs.
beat Winnipeg, they beat Toronto, they beat Montreal. That's the three teams that are in the top four, along with Edmonton. They've all blown a game or lost a game to the Senators, and the
Yep.
Oilers haven't. So
Yeah, and I mean the Senators are all but out of it, and Vancouver's in major trouble, having played that many games and only having 17
yeah,
points. The Flames aren't in as bad a shape as Vancouver yet,
no,
but you know what? They sometimes say, towards the end of a losing streak, you play and you deserve to win, but you don't. Well, that's not the Flames right now. They look like they're in disarray. There's something wrong. I don't know what's up, Bruce, but there's something wrong in that dressing room, and I don't see them pulling out of this dive immediately. So they're in some kind of trouble, even though I know we're just a third of the way through the season.
yeah. Well, Vancouver smoked them 5-1 in Calgary,
Mm-hmm.
and then the Oilers beat them 2-1 in Calgary. And I think it would be fair to describe Calgary's performance last night as lackluster.
Yep.
Like it wasn't it was a quiet, controlled game, and it was a frustrating game to watch, but it was a whole hell of a lot less frustrating to watch it with a 2-1 lead as it would have been with a 2-1 deficit, like the Flames
Yeah.
were, with the clock just grinding and grinding and grinding down,
Yeah.
and no progress being made. And tonight, they did come out and they made a hard, heavy effort, and their big meanies played like big meanies in the
Mm-hmm.
early going, and Edmonton withstood that and then just brushed them aside. Really, I mean,
Well,
7-1. Wow.
well, you know who was invisible? I mean, there wasn't a Johnny Gaudreau setting all night. Like, did he play?
Yeah, he played. He had the puck a few times. He distributed it, but he didn't really do any. He didn't break anybody's ankles tonight like he did that one
Yeah,
time last night.
I thought he was pretty ineffective.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to be happy with the win, and that the Calgarians are heading back down Highway 2 with their tail between their legs after getting thumped on Hockey Night in Canada.
Yep.
It's not quite as satisfying as the 8-3 from last year, but tending in that direction.
It'll do. Yeah.
It'll do. So my number, I mean, the 10 hits from Adam Larsson is certainly a number, but I'm just going to go with, oh, I had it too, 3 minutes and 29 seconds, which is the amount of time in this game that the score was tied. And once Edmonton scored on that power play, courtesy the Sam Bennett hit, and Edmonton power play retaliated. The best way to retaliate against a cheap hit is not to go out and take a penalty back as you try and punch the guy. It's for your power play to go out there and hit him where it hurts, in the net. And the Oilers power play did exactly that. Popped one home at the bad memory, 3:29 mark of the first period of that very early penalty, and they were ahead to stay. They extended it 2-0. Calgary got one. Edmonton got a key one back to make it a 2-goal bulge at the end of the first, and then they just stretched it out from there. And this was after last night. Only 5:41 was that game tied, and Edmonton took the lead to stay when Puljujärvi scored to open up the account in the 2-1 win. That Edmonton made it 2-0. Calgary cut it, but couldn't close it, and so Edmonton playing with the lead throughout the weekend, and this has been a problem for Calgary. Well, good. That's their problem. The thing for the Oilers to do is to take advantage of the other team's problems, and if they're having trouble getting going at the beginning of the game, jump them, get on them,
Yep.
get ahead of them.
Yeah, and the
And they
Oilers
did it
have
both
more
games.
first period goals than any team in the NHL right
Yes.
now, do they not? So
So those are. I think that covers the waterfront for good things, bad things, and numbers for tonight. And I'm going to sit in and enjoy writing these game grades, which it's going to take a little while to sift through the rubble of my notes from that game. But it's going to be a happy story of with the exception of those injuries. That's always a drag at any time.
One other thing
either team, guys getting hurt. I hate injuries.
I'm the same, absolutely. One other thing I'll throw in is that I thought Matt Tkachuk had an impact on the game tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I did. Let's just to be fair, I did think he showed up
Yeah. Oh
tonight.
yeah. 100%.
So good for him. But my point is, the Oilers never took the bait,
Right.
and I think that's been a long learning process with this guy. And it's really easy to take a stick or to take a poke and give one back. But I thought there was lots of opportunities tonight. You mentioned Darnell Nurse. There was a number of times where I think the old Darnell Nurse would have poked him one.
Yeah.
And there was one long stare off between Tkachuk and Alex Chason, where I kept waiting for Chason to just level him, but didn't. And you know what? On a night like tonight, it's like, don't give it back. That's just what he's looking for. Having been in that position, that's a difficult thing, because you want nothing more than to pop that guy one, right? Yeah. So
and
know there's
that
some,
he'd do the old flopperoo and get the power play.
Absolutely. He is the straw that stirs the drink on that team. And so if you can turn the other cheek when he pulls those shenanigans out of his hat, you're going to benefit from it. And they did tonight.
And then you just chase him into Adam Larsson's corner and let defense unfold as they should. Man, did Larsson bash him a couple times. Oh.
Yeah, he sure did. I enjoyed every one of them too.
Yes, sir. So, well, I enjoyed this hockey game, Kurt, and I enjoyed this conversation. So thanks again for filling in. Boss went away for the weekend, and we got a back-to-back sweep over the Battle of Alberta to savor and chat about, and each get a turn at doing the player grades, and all hail to the Oilers. This was an important step forward this weekend.
Absolutely. So, well, nothing replaces David and Bruce on the Cult of Hockey podcast, but I'm sure happy to play the third wheel, and it's been good fun for me too.
Yeah, thanks for tipping it. Nice to have another option that one or the other of us can take a night off on occasion. That's when other things do come up. So thank you very much for talking tonight, Kurt.
You betcha. It was a good time.
Great. Thanks for listening, everyone. And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.